Hey everybody, it's Devin Francis, also known as Dr. Blackard.
Ah! Have fun
Okay,
editing that.
okay. Was that about anything in particular?
My sleep schedule this week has not been good.
Okay, and this is episode 214 of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast. Uh, Victoria, what are we talking about today?
Everyone's favorite part of the show.
You'd think this bit would get old at some point.
Judge me tender.
And
And makes no mistake.
nope, that's the December episode.
Snow him who's boss.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so as I think we talked about last time, because this album, 72, ends in a three-parter, we're going to talk about all of that in the next episode along with the review. And so we're pulling the November episode in with this review so that we have two episodes to talk about. And then when we review December, it'll be with the year-long review for 2021. So that'll kind of balance things out. So episode 930, Judge Me Tender, written by Marshall Younger. What happens, Victoria?
In this episode, Bridget is kind of a little bit upset because Wyatt started going to church. He's acting a little different. He doesn't really feel comfortable watching the same trash TV with her and their mom that they used to watch, which the trash TV descriptions were very funny. I thought the first one was a lot funnier than the second one.
Well, because the second one was just the same thing, but with
Yeah,
like different adjectives.
it was like the same joke, but the first time it was funny. And so she goes to Wits End, where Wyatt's birthday happens. Jules is there helping out Connie, like serving ice cream to all the kids and stuff. And Jules goes over to, or no, Bridget goes over to talk to Jules, and they hit it off. They have lots in common. They basically instantly become friends. It's very nice. And then Connie comes in. And then Connie's just like, Jules, I need to talk to you. And then just as the door is closing, you hear Connie be like, why are you hanging out? And it cuts off. And then Bridget's like, Connie hates me. Connie wants to ruin me and thinks I'm not like a good friend for Jules.
To also clarify on the earlier scene, the reason that Bridget was upset about Wyatt was that she felt like Wyatt acting the way that he was about his own preferences must have been judging her and being holier than thou and stuff like that, which he was not, but she felt like that, which is why she felt the same from Connie. She was like, oh, Connie must be, she's judging me and she thinks I'm not good enough for her sister.
And all Christians are like this, is basically the conclusion she comes to.
As we all know.
And then Jules and Bridget spend more time together. They're like hanging out and at Connie's house in Jules's room. And then Connie comes in and she's like, hey, Jules, remember that girl who was gonna come over? Well, she's gonna come over now. She's gonna have dinner with us tonight while Bridget's also here. Okay, bye. And then she leaves. And Bridget's just like, what is wrong with your sister? And Jules is like, please don't eat her cooking. And what's the other girl's name again? You didn't write it down?
I don't think I mentioned it anywhere in here.
Okay, I'll go look on the wiki.
Kristen.
Okay, that sounds right. And so this girl who, I don't know if she's
is
in
a Puritan
foster family, but
no,
I guess there are adopted kids
I think
in
they're
the
just
family.
Amish.
Okay, I feel bad
It
for her
sounded like
mom.
only one of them was adopted. The rest of them were just they were just born.
I feel so bad for her mom.
I feel bad for all of them, Victoria.
So Kristen is from a family where she is one of 17 children, and she has dinner with Connie, Jules, and Bridget. And she's just like, I never really get to eat out much, which makes sense because it'd be so expensive for all of them. And she like lives on a farm and stuff. And she's like really nice. And Bridget's like, there's something wrong with her. There's something she's hiding. She's real sketch.
I mean, to be fair to Bridget, it's like, it's not just like, oh, she's nice and she's from a farm. The girl was literally like a Puritan.
Yeah.
She was like, I've never seen the technology before.
She was Applejack. And so they have like a sleepover basically. And then Bridget's like, let's talk about the worst thing we've ever done. And then Kristen's like, I don't want to do this. And Jules is like, I also don't want to do this at all. But then they get convinced to do it. I don't remember what Bridget's is. Did she ever get the chance to say hers?
She drove her mom's car.
Oh, right. When she was like 12.
Yeah.
To the store.
Yeah.
And she almost crashed it like several times. And instead of thinking it's funny or cool, the girls are like, that's crazy dangerous.
Well, no,
Thank
I think
God
Jules
you're not
was
dead.
like, aw, sweet. And
No,
Kristen
Jules was like, you were okay though, right? Like,
no,
Jules
that was
did
Kristen.
not
Kristen was like,
sound-
oh, thank the Lord that you are all right. I'm so glad that you had hedge of protections and guardian angels guiding from striking your foot against the
She's
stone.
Not that extreme, Devin.
Did you hear the prayer that she said for the meal?
Okay, that was extreme, but she wasn't
It
like...
was extremely funny is what it was. The comedic, like, having the character introduced and have that be her introduction after where Bridget was at in this episode was incredibly comedic. Is what it was.
She almost in some ways reminded me of Connie's original roommate. But, like, not that extreme. And, yeah, Jules didn't really sound into that bit either, in my opinion. She was kind of like, oh, that's, okay.
Yeah, I mean, she wasn't like, oh, man, yeah, that's so sick. Yeah, give me 5 about it.
Yeah. And then Jules is like, I stole a bracelet once in California.
A necklace.
And I feel really bad about it. And I've never worn it. And Kristen's like, can you return it? And Jules is like, I don't know. I guess I can. I probably should. And then Bridget's like, okay, Kristen, tell us the worst thing you've ever done. She's like, I woke up and I didn't milk the cow, but I said I did to my parents. And then I felt really bad. So I milked it later. And they're just like, that is sad. And then Bridget's like, what's wrong with you? And then really lays into Kristen and calls her a liar.
She's like, you're a plant. You're a CIA plant from Connie. You're a Connie's informant agency plant.
And then Kristen runs out crying. And Connie's just like, Bridget, get out of my house. Which... yeah, can't blame her for that one. And then was it Connie who talked to her later? No, Jules talked to Bridget later.
Yeah, I mean, Bridget talked to all of them, but she talked to Jules first.
And then Jules basically told her like what happened, and like Connie was never trying to keep them away from each other. It just kind of seemed that way from the little context that Bridget had of what was going on in each scenario. And Kristen is actually really nice and genuinely is like that. And
I don't think anyone doubted. Well, except for Bridget.
Yeah, except for Bridget.
Kristen was genuinely like that.
And then Bridget apologizes to everyone. And then the three of them are friends and they get to hang out. So Bridget now has friends who aren't just what's her face? Nelson's sister.
Valerie,
thank you. Valerie's been in more episodes than Nelson, but I can remember Nelson's name easier than Valerie's.
Interesting.
I don't know. I think it's because I like Nelson more. And yeah, so Bridget has friends who are going to be a good influence on her. I really, really liked Jules in this episode.
Yeah.
Because this was like the first, I want to say, episode where Jules doesn't really learn a lesson. And she's more one of the people helping teach the lesson and is like
I would say if we count...
neutral, good-leaning party in the episode.
I would say if we also
nice.
count Buck is not in the episode, then I think I would agree with that.
Buck isn't in this episode.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying there's probably episodes where that's the case before, where she's imparting a lesson to Buck.
Oh.
But I don't think there's been one. A little
bit, yeah.
I don't think there's been one before where
most
she isn't learning the lesson.
Most of the time when she's in an episode with Buck, she causes trouble in
most
some
of
way.
The time, too, yes.
Even if she's, like, not the main character.
Most of the time, but sometimes
she,
it
like,
goes the other way around.
She didn't cause any problems in this episode. And honestly, just listening to it, you could just... If you take it and then you compare it to, like, one of her original episodes, it's like, look at how much she's grown. I'm so proud of her. She was really good in this episode. I really liked her in this.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said before, I don't know if that episode has come out yet. It's really nice to have, like, her in an episode where Buck isn't there,
mm-hmm.
and you can just, like, see how much she's changed as a person and see her develop independently from him.
Yes. Which is why I said, oh, you'll like this episode too, because you talked about that immediately before I listened to this.
But then
and then you were angry. You were angry when you listened to it that I deceived you.
I unfortunately took this, because I listened to this back to back with the other one, and I mentioned a bunch before that I missed Jillian. And then I don't know if you saw that message or you just ignored it. And you said you'll like this next episode. And I took that to mean Jillian's going to be in it because it partially took place at Connie's house. And so
I feel like I would have kind of been spoiling you about things if I was saying it right on the heels of you talking about Jillian in a way that I intended to be, oh, and she's here now.
Well, it seemed that way to me, just looking at those two messages back to back.
It does seem like you have a strong tendency to misinterpret when I say you'll like a character that's in this episode as, this episode, I'm telling you, contains whichever character you last mentioned that you want to see. Yeah.
Whenever I hear you'll like this episode, it means that episode is either going to have Wellington or Jillian in it. And that's it. There's no other reason I would ever like an episode. As everyone knows, I hate every episode that doesn't have them in it, which means 0 out of 5 stars for this one. This episode was really good. I don't know what to rate it, though.
It's Wyatt's first church service. We're kind of building forward off of the recent AIOC episode where they went to the church house thingy for military people, and Wyatt gets home. He's like, Wooten and Mrs. Bassett drove me home. I was like, I think that might be the first time that we've heard Mrs. Bassett.
That made me smile. It made me hesitate, and I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like Wooten's mom. Oh, wait.
You don't get her.
Please, Mrs. Bassett is my mother-in-law. And then Wyatt immediately is like, oh yeah, I was converting my whole Sunday school class into conspiracy theorists, including my teacher. And I was like, oh no. Wooten, what have you done?
Man, if he was there for the rich poor man, can you imagine how much even more off the wall that episode would be? If Marvin Washington and Wyatt interacted and young Jared, what would happen? And let's get Jack in here too, just while we're at it.
So, they're like, come on, we're going to watch our favorite reality show. And they play the trailer and then they start talking about it. They're like, I think this kid's going to get slapped. I was like, I want a whole album of this reality show. I get it, and how like, oh, this would kind of drain you over time to watch and stuff. But like, it sounds really entertainingly petty for like a quick pick me up. And I like it. Like you said, at the end, when they're like oh, the joke is that it's the exact same thing, but not. I was like, okay, this is funny, but it's not as funny. Like, it's the whole joke of like, oh, it's just mass produced the exact same thing, but you tweak the variables by 5%. Is like, it's by necessity.
It was the same joke.
By
What I was
necessity, it will be a
expecting.
diminishing return of humor. But the first time I was like, oh, I like this petty or like spoiled brat flat, I think it was called.
Yeah, something like that, where everyone gets slapped. It was basically like The Bachelor, but you just slap a bunch of people. Like The Bachelor combined with Bachelorette, combined with like Big Brother.
Well, I don't
they're
think
all
there was dating.
teenagers and they're all slapping each other.
It was The Bachelor, except they're all like incredibly wealthy heirs to like corporate empires.
I think what I was kind of hoping with the second version of the joke is either they. I don't know. I think there was only one thing I was hoping, that pretty much they just like saw that and they just like turned it off and they're like, this looks awful. Like, either the joke in that case would be like, they genuinely don't think the show looks good, in which case it's just like, it's the exact same thing basically, and that's the joke. That like they think one is great and they think the other sucks when it's just the same thing. Either that, or it's just like less of a like a non-joke where it's just like, oh, I can't believe we used to like this kind of thing, like seeing it in a new light. But they were like,
I'm glad
no,
it was
this
the
is
former.
great, which is weird because like Wyatt was like, this one is bad and this is the same thing, and he's like, this is good.
That's what I appreciated, in that it's like, oh, I like that we can see with Wyatt in some ways he's kind of like, in a non-judgy way, he's just being like, I don't know, there's just some things I'm like, I don't find it as funny as anymore. But also the fact that he was like, okay, I still enjoy this, it made me feel that it's not too much of Wyatt is like, oh, I must
avert my eyes.
I must shun all earthly content now. That he was like, okay, you know, like, I'm changing in some little ways, but I'm only human. And I liked that, actually. Also, I think one of the tweaked jokes in the repeat was that, like, and they're all named Jennifer or something like that, which was good.
It was like a plumbing.
There was something
thing.
about the
it was just like,
broken.
They're all janitors. I think that's
and
what it was.
And there's an anaconda loose.
It's
in
not.
the
They're
toilet.
all named Jennifer. They're all janitors. They all have to like plunge all these toilets.
No, they all
before
had the
time
same
runs
name.
out. Oh, okay. And there's an anaconda loose, and that was also part of like the first show. There was also like an anaconda loose.
No, there was a different animal loose.
Okay. But yeah, the first time it was funny. The second time I was just like, oh, it's the same.
It was still funny, just less funny. Like I said, it's an inherent diminishing return when you do the joke of it's the same thing, but it's slightly different.
Every now and then I hear like stuff about reality TV shows and like how ridiculous they are, and I don't watch any reality TV shows anymore. I haven't since I was a kid. And it makes me miss Rose Buddies, but at the same time, it's like I can never have the experience of listening to Rose Buddies like all the way through again. Like, it wouldn't be the same.
That's true.
Because the first time you experience it, you're like, oh my gosh. And I went through it so fast, I probably wouldn't remember that much, but still, it's not the same. And I love Rose Buddies. It was not fun to listen to by the end, which was why it stopped.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I was legitimately stressed out.
I mean, the thing that kept it still enjoyable on some level was the fact that Griffin and Rachel are on the same page that you are as the listener.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that was nice. That, like, if you're not having fun, they're not having fun either.
Yeah.
But it was
if you're
rough to listen to.
If you're too cold, they're too cold. Bring them inside. Yeah. Give them a different podcast.
Even if I'm watching, it doesn't really matter what it is. If I'm watching something and the person's like not enjoying it either, I usually don't enjoy it, no matter how entertaining they're being.
Which is why you guys love this podcast so much, because we are never negative about any episodes, and you guys love that.
I'd say there's a difference between being negative about something and genuinely being disheartened and upset by something.
That's true.
Especially,
there's a difference in the ways that we might feel disheartened about a certain episode, and the disheartenment that you would get from the content of The Bachelor that led to the end of Rose Buddies.
Yeah, like I still remember the bit where they're like, "Hey, this character smashed a window and broke into like the house of these other people and threatened to beat them up." And it's just like, "Oh, that's really awful. That sucks actually. I don't like this."
Yeah.
So like, yeah, that kind of stuff.
Okay, Wyatt's voice is changing, I think. And that's cool. I was like, oh, little man grown up.
I hope they don't get rid of his BA.
So Jules and Bridget don't just spontaneously become friends. Bridget's like, oh, there's nothing to do at this party at Wits End. And Carla's like, I think you should be friends with Jules. And I was like, Carla is so right. Bridget,
Carla said that, and I was just like, based queen, go over to Jules.
I was so excited. I was like, yes, bestie. I'm so glad you were seeing what I'm seeing.
Have we ever said that in a past episode? I feel like we might have said that. I think we literally just said that
like
a couple episodes
ago.
Yeah. Because it's good. They're good together.
Yeah, they immediately
very
start
similar.
bonding over trashy reality shows, and I'm like, yes. It was very
It's so funny because I didn't realize that they were at Wits End at first. I thought they were at their house.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, Jules was invited to Wyatt's party. I was like, one,
now I
Jules was invited to Wyatt's party. Two, Jules said yes to the invitation to Wyatt's party.
Now I understand your confusion.
And then I was like, and three, she's just standing in the corner. And I was like, was she forced to come here?
We get a couple more lines with Wyatt about this change he's having in his life, where he's like, I want a snack. And he's like, I'll just have a fistful of loose granola. And I'm like, I really like the fact that Wyatt is the character who's like having this comically fast, like moral turnaround in his life, because I think Wyatt is one of the only people who could do this like this and play it off like, okay, guess I'm 100% whole hog into this now, because that's how he is with conspiracy theories, and so it makes sense. He's just going to flip a light switch and be like, okay, I guess this is what I'm doing.
I feel like he's one of the only characters you could really get away with doing that with an Odyssey. So like, might as well take full advantage of it. And while we're talking about Wyatt, him and the other boy characters I mentioned before, there's so many weird little boys in Odyssey. I think we need more
Victoria,
weird
there's so many weird little boys in real life.
No, I
what
think
is
we
life
need,
if not weird little boys and girls?
I think we need more weird little girls in Odyssey.
I agree. Because
Yeah.
life has disproportionately way more than Odyssey represents.
No, I think it's fine that we have this many weird little boys in Odyssey. It's great and hilarious, and they're amazing. I think we need more weird little girl
I
representation.
agree entirely, yes.
In this show, because I can't really think of that many weird little girls.
Bethany would have like the same level of imaginative reveries as some of
Bethany's
them,
a weird little girl.
but she was too young to really fill
like,
the same niche in the same way.
I'm making a stew, and then she just grabs a bunch of mud and dirt and rocks, and then she walks around to people and she's like, eat this. Like, I want a weird little girl.
That's just a normal child, but younger than the age range that we see children on Odyssey.
I want a little girl who does that, and someone's like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm making a potion for my pet dinosaur, and then she runs off into the woods.
That is...
And puts like a bucket on her head or something.
That is most kids at that age, but like I said, we don't really see kids at that age usually on the show.
We don't see little girls acting like that in Odyssey.
Have you seen any little boy act specifically like that on Odyssey?
No, but like I need it for little girls. I want
Victoria, I think you're misinterpreting the age range though, is what I'm concerned about.
We have a million imaginative boys, and I want at least one imaginative girl.
I agree with you. I'm just saying the thing
I guess
you're
we have
describing...
Bethany, but I want two.
I know, I'm just saying the scenario you're describing is like a kid who's like 4 years younger than the kid that you actually want. At least 4 years younger.
It can be a kid's younger sibling, like how Bethany was.
No, but that's not what I want. I don't want just like a brush off side little character or little sibling characters. I want like a mate, like Jack Davis and like Trent. Like we want a main character like that.
I think it's very bold of you to say a 12-year-old can't grab a bunch of mud sticks and then make a soup outside for their imaginary dinosaur friend.
I think that you're settling for too low. We want like a main a mainer character who's allowed
I'm trying
to
to
be
give
weird.
myself realistic expectations so I won't get hurt again.
No, demand more, Victoria.
No.
Anyways, Bridget is over at Jules. They're having dinner. Kristen shows up and she prays for the meal, and it is incredibly
You know what? Kristen
funny.
is a weird little girl. I'll give her that one.
I laughed out loud at Kristen's prayer for the meal because it's like, oh, she's going to give like a pretty, like, a prayer like a grandparent would give over a meal. And she does that. And then it keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going. And it starts out being like old fashioned prayer. And then it just like really gets into the weeds of like, Lord, please take the labor that went into creating this food and just let it imbue us with the energy that we need to spread your light into all the world, and let us never hide it under a bushel, but spread it to all corners of the universe with the incredible energy that's been given to us by the magnanimous feast that Connie has slaved away to prepare for us as the incredible
Penny
jeweled
or
servant.
Connie made like pizza pops or something. She's like, ah.
Yeah, it was very funny for that to be the introduction to the character after Jules is like, oh man, this is probably someone that like Connie brought in as a ringer to be her friend, and she's probably going to be like judgy and super perfect, and then that's the prayer she gives.
You mean
was,
Bridget thought
yeah,
that?
Yeah. It was very funny. I don't believe for a single second that was the worst thing Jules has done is take that necklace. I mean, for one, she was the perilous pen. So I feel like that as a baseline.
Oh, I always forget about that.
I feel like as a baseline, trying to betray Wooten's whole spot like that is worse, like at the least.
I'm just imagining like Jules' thought process, and she's like, something that's not illegal. And then it was stuff that was too small. She's like, okay, something.
Yeah. She chose a very intermediate thing because she's like, I don't know either of you very well yet. This is what I'm going to say. The worst thing I've ever done is absolutely
I want to say something
not
that
the
I probably
accurate
won't get
answer.
arrested for.
Exactly. I was really hoping because which is a word, they got to Kristen last. I was really hoping that her thing, she was going to be like, worst thing I've ever done. And they're like thinking she was going to say the thing that she did say. And she was like, I had to take a shovel and kill a man, feed his body to the cows. Which is not what happened.
I was wondering if it was going to be something like really sketchy, like they were going to think she's really normal. I was like, no, I'm completely unhinged.
Look, she lives on the farm, guys, okay? She's seen some stuff. She's like, and now y'all are taking this secret to the grave with us. This is a blood pact now.
I got us a Christmas present. It's a secret we can never share.
Yeah. And then finally Connie's like, Bridget, I don't hate you. Like, what? I mean, as soon as Connie got cut off in the library, I was like, oh, definitely Connie was saying, like, what are you doing hanging out in the library? Come on, you're supposed to be helping. Like, I immediately clocked exactly what that misinterpretation was.
I did actually think Connie didn't like Bridget.
See, I was like,
because I wouldn't put it beyond Connie to be, like, petty on a certain level.
Yeah, I mean, Connie will do that in general, but I was like, okay, the fact that she got cut off right there, and there is a very reasonable end to the sentence, which isn't judging Bridget, is like, okay, I'm pretty sure that's what she was saying, and what I thought she was saying was, like, word for word what she did say. But also, I'm like, Connie doesn't hate Bridget. Connie's known, exactly as Connie said in the episode, I was like, she's known Bridget for too long and seen her go through enough to, like, not think so lowly of her as Bridget thought that she did. I was like...
See, it wouldn't be, like... I maybe wouldn't have thought that she straight up didn't like Bridget if it weren't for the fact of, like, how awkwardly she came into, like, Jules' room to be like, someone else is here.
I mean, yeah, that was a bit of, like, and Bridget reasonably was like, okay, it kind of feels like that, and then it, Jules kind of explained.
Which, to be
later,
fair,
like,
it is
happened.
awkward if you're hanging out with someone, and then it's just like, oh, this is the only day this person could come over. I'm sorry, it's while you're hanging out with another person.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, I would feel uncomfortable, personally, even if I knew Connie was cool with me.
It is important in the end to the theme of the episode that Connie wasn't judging Bridget, because I really like the theme of the episode, and that's what this brings us to, which is that nothing makes you feel more judged than when you personally feel self-conscious and insecure about yourself, and nobody is judging you, because you're going to think, like, oh, everyone hates me.
Hmm.
They all hated me. Hey,
They
Goob,
all
what's up, Goob?
hated
Cool,
me.
cool binder, Goob.
That's
Um,
like, I know I always say it, but that's such a good scene.
yeah, it's funny because it wasn't until I was saying it right now that I thought of that scene, but that really is like the perfect representation of this. Bridget felt even I would say beforehand, Bridget didn't feel particularly like insecure or like she was doing bad things, but as soon as she saw like Wyatt having one change in his life, all of a sudden she became hyper conscious about like everything that she did and projected that sudden self-created insecurity onto everyone else around her. And so it's very important to the moral of this episode to learn in the end that no, nobody was judging her except for herself. And
Yeah. I'm gonna give this one a I don't know, 3.8.
I'm giving it a 4.8. I really liked this episode. I thought it had an excellent theme. Kristen was very funny as a character, especially the whole prayer scene. I like that we're seeing development forward with Wyatt, and just the fact that it was about like, oh, we're getting to see Bridget and Jules become friends with each other, and the way that they're both going to try and help be positive influences on each other. I'm really excited about because that's a friendship I wanted to happen, and it is, and I really hope that it goes places.
Yeah. I I don't know. I liked a lot of stuff this episode did. I didn't get like crazy into it though. So yeah, that's my reasoning, I guess.
So, episode two. I was gonna say episode 214.
Episode 2 of the Oddcast. Welcome.
That's the episode of the podcast we're doing. The episode we're reviewing is Snow 'Em Who's Boss, which is episode 920,
I'm supposed to say
written by Marshall Younger.
I had
What
it
happens?
I had it pulled up.
Well,
Okay.
I know, but I always say at the start
Whatever.
of the review.
In this episode we get to see the kids who Wooten was driving.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one we get is Wyatt. And my
No.
first thought is
It's Olivia as the first one who speaks.
first one we get is Olivia, but we know it's a little boy who's gonna get bodied.
Yeah.
Brained.
Bodied, brained, and sold.
And I was like, okay, so Olivia's here. And then we get Wyatt, and I was like, oh no, Wyatt. Wyatt's gonna die. Anyone but Wyatt. And we get Zoe. And I'm like, okay. And then Jay. And I was like, no, Jay. I was like, either way, I'm gonna be really upset.
See, remember when I said like I'd seen the art for the last episode and I was like, oh no. Because what I caught a glimpse of after the last part before we recorded the review was that the art featured Jay, but the description said like with Wyatt still missing, and I was like, oh no. I was like, I knew that it was gonna be someone we knew.
So did you think it was Jay or Wyatt then?
I thought it was Jay because of the picture, but it could still be Wyatt. It could be either of
Yeah,
them. But the point
I
is, I knew
know.
it would be one of those two.
Do you think it? I did
I feel
also
like
think like, what if it's a red herring and it's just still someone we don't know?
Well,
and
I'm
it's
worried
neither
that
of them?
it'll be Jay and that Wyatt is like the red herring because he went missing. So what happens in the episode?
So Wooten is driving the 4 kids to the Riley Clemens farm. And then it gets stuck in the snow because it's snowing like crazy outside. We get the broadcast.
The first
with
one.
the weather broadcast again.
The one that happened while they were still at home and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So this puts it at the beginning, basically, of the first episode and towards the midway point of the second episode, like 3/4 midway point.
Which kind of emphasizes how much time passed before the Calhouns actually left their house. Because, like, Kayla made that while they were stuck at home. But then all of this stuff needs to happen, and then the next episode, and someone gets injured before the call came in that Dr. Calhoun actually needed to go to the hospital that prompted them to leave the house. So all that stuff happens in the span of, like, that first section of the first episode.
Mm-hmm. So the third episode's definitely going to just, like, be part 2 of this one, basically, right?
The fourth one, you mean?
Or, yeah.
Yeah, well, like we said before, I imagine it'll finish this off, and then we'll time skip forward to after the first episode, because that's the most future thing that's happened, where we'll see the Calhouns in the hospital again, and either Wyatt or
like,
Jay.
the bright side of thing is that we know everyone's going to be okay in the end.
Yes.
I mean, like, there might be, like, a little emotional, psychological stuff, but, like, physically, everyone will be okay by the end.
Well, I mean, okay, we know everyone will survive.
I'll take it. If it's Jay, I mean, I don't want it to be Wyatt either, but, like, Jay still does things that kind of piss me off. And by things, I mean anytime he interacts with Zoe. But, like, I don't want him
You mean,
to
like,
go through
in this episode where it's like, oh, someone needs to give me a comforting hug.
Yeah,
Whose name
where he
rhymes
has a
with
role of
Joey.
leadership,
And I was
and
like,
then he
I'm going to
immediately
commit violence.
uses his role of leadership to try and get Zoe to literally snuggle with him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that made me cringe a lot.
Yeah, I have concerns.
Mm-hmm. I still think it's the thing we talked about before, where, like, people make the argument, it's just like, oh, they're kids, it's harmless. And it's like, no.
Nope.
People shouldn't act like that.
And he's the oldest one out of them, as he said.
Kids when they're little is boundaries and what is okay and what isn't okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in your teens, you do go through a lot of learning and you do a lot of stuff that you realize later wasn't cool. But sometimes people don't go through that part where they realize things weren't cool that they did when they were teens. And they still think they're cool as adults because they are never told not to do those things. So, yeah. At this point, I feel like it needs a dedicated episode of people just
as we've been saying
teaching Jay that he needs to step off.
Literally years we've been saying this.
I hate it here. I hate it here.
So what happens in the episode?
So the bus or car, whatever, the bus that Wooten's driving gets stuck. The bus for 5 people, you know when you get a full bus for 5 people? And then Wooten talks about how, like, cars got stuck a lot in Alaska, and he's like, there's 4 things you need to remember, but I only remember 3. And none of them are working. So I'm going to go out in the snow, and I'm going to try and walk to the farm.
And the first 3 things was basically just rock the car.
Yeah. And he's just like, that 4th one probably wasn't important. Anyway, bye, guys. And then the kids fight over who's in charge, and the Odyssey writers remember, hey, it's been a really long time since we did, like, an episode with kids where they elect people, and they decide what kid is best kid. And
I thought you were going to say a long time since we had an episode where someone got carbon monoxide poisoning.
That too. So both those things happen. What episode did someone get carbon monoxide?
Run-of-the-mill Miracle. With Grady.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, Grady didn't get it.
Well, yeah,
Samantha
it was a Grady-centric episode.
Yeah. So fortunately, it wasn't as bad as that time. No one needed hospitalization. Zoe and Olivia were the ones who had it the worst, and it wasn't that bad for them.
Because Wyatt acted very quickly. And
Wyatt is king. He immediately got them all out of the car, even when they didn't want to leave the car necessarily. All of them knew what carbon monoxide poisoning was. None of them had to have, like, a very lengthy explanation of what it was while they're still in the bus, and they're like, I don't want to leave the bus. What is carbon monoxide poisoning? That doesn't sound real.
Or Wyatt straddles backwards on one of the bus chairs, and he's like, hey, kids, carbon monoxide bonds to hemoglobin with 523 times the affinity of oxygen.
Carbon monoxide. So they all leave. They open the windows of the bus. Olivia also was voted to be the leader, but all of them do their own leader moments throughout the episode. And they basically try to like have time pass. The reason why the carbon monoxide leak happened is because Jay was telling them that they need to turn the heat on, but the exhaust pipe was blocked to the car. And they didn't realize it was blocked. And Wooten was very specific about telling them not to have like that on for long amounts of time.
10
He
minutes
tried to
per
tell
hour.
them
I mean,
about
to
the
be fair,
leak.
I never would have thought about the fact that that could happen. Obviously,
I didn't know that could happen.
I mean, obviously, I knew that, like, if you're running a car in an enclosed space, that'll happen.
Yeah, I knew about that.
Because, you know, you see, like, people, if they, like, gas themselves or, like, close the window, run the car in the garage, right? The hose in the window and stuff.
You know, like Nerve, that movie that came out a little while ago? The movie was bad, but I read the book it was based off before the movie came out, and that happened to the protagonist.
Yeah, so that's a thing. And so I thought of that, and I was like, well, that makes sense. It's the same thing because you're, by blocking the exhaust, you're still causing all the exhaust to go into the cabin of the vehicle. But I never would have thought of that as a concern that would happen. So I was really impressed that Wyatt, you know, immediately, because as soon as Olivia's like, I'm feeling dizzy, I'm like, well, there's a lot of reasons for that. But as soon as Zoe is also like, I'm dizzy, and he was like, that's weird. At the same time, something external must be happening.
They both said, like, I'm dizzy. Zoe said, like, I'm dizzy. And I was like, is Zoe the one who gets, like, in?
Exactly.
And then
I was like, Olivia.
I'm dizzy. And I was like, the fumes!
Yep.
Also, I remember that happens in, I think, when the Paranormal Activity movies, I think, like, the fourth one or something like that. The third or fourth one. That happens to, like, one of the characters. They're locked in, like, they get locked in a garage, and then the fumes come on the car, and then they get in the car, and then they just, like, rear end the car into, like, the door for the garage, and then they just, like, fly down the driveway, and then they run back into the house, and then they fight a ghost. I haven't watched all the movies, but I have seen, like, I watched pretty much it, like, react to all the movies, and yeah. What? They lose the fight.
Movies.
They lose the fight.
I know. I watched the same review.
So Wooten comes back, and he's freezing, and he realizes that he went in a big circle because he got turned around. And then he's like, okay, I guess I'm going to go back and try and figure out what's happening. And then he goes back. Jay's in charge now. Jay tries to abuse his power to sexually harass Zoe. Devin and I die inside once again. And then Wooten radios everyone, saying something. The radio cuts out when he yells. Everyone kind of freaks out. Wyatt's like, I'll go and find Wooten and figure out what's happening. Because you hear,
like, some kind of animal snarl or something.
And then Jay and the girls are together in the car.
The lesson of this episode is that Wyatt is the only competent child in Odyssey.
Yeah.
He had all of the, like,
kind of wanted Wyatt to be in charge at the beginning.
He had all these emergency supplies that he brought with him that were very important and useful. He had all of the important survival knowledge that kept them safe. And then he was also the one who was like, we need to go out and look for Wooten. We're all coming and we're sticking together. And then when the others were like, yeah, it's cold. And he was like, fine, then I'll go by myself. But I need to make sure that he's okay. It's like, Wyatt is the only person right now. Also,
Wyatt really is the VIP of this episode. And then the girls convinced Jay that they should go out and look for everyone. And then that's when it turns into straight up the end of Muppet Family Christmas. Is that what you thought of?
I think I did think that, yeah.
Yeah,
like,
I heard, like, sleigh bells and yelling, and I was just like, Miss Piggy, she's here! Hello, Kirby! And then...
Wyatt's like, Wooten's like, I just ran out I just ran into them out in the snow, and they had this outfit for me.
They had this outfit waiting for me. And so Whit and Wilson are here now. And they brought Wooten back. Wyatt is not with them.
Yes, they did not.
So
they did not
they're
find
like,
Wyatt on their way in.
Even though
we
abandoned our boy, and then the episode ends.
Unless there was a time skip in there, it seemed like it was like 60 seconds between Wyatt leaving and Wooten arriving.
I think there was a time skip. Okay. I got confused too, because they're like, Wyatt's missing. And I was like, oh,
I feel like Wyatt should still be within like a stone's throw of the bus.
So what happened basically was there was a time skip after Wyatt left. And then on top of that, Wooten and Whit and Wilson, when they came back, did not take the main road.
Yeah, they came from a different direction.
Wyatt did take the main road.
Mm-hmm.
So Wyatt is out in the wilderness, but again,
at least he's on the road.
He is the most competent person in this entire episode.
That's true.
Like, Wyatt didn't wanted to be a leader in the beginning, but wasn't like heavily campaigning or anything like that. I was thinking either Zoe will be the leader because she doesn't want to be the leader, and she's also like already the student council.
He was like, I'll be the vizier.
So like she's already a good leader, you know that. She like works in leadership positions a lot.
But then she gave in to Jay.
And I was thinking like, I don't want Olivia to be in charge because she's pushing for it too hard, and Jay's definitely not going to be in charge because that's just a bad idea. And then they're instantly like, Olivia's in charge. And I was just like, no.
I mean, she has the experience. She read the leadership book.
That shouldn't mean anything.
But, yeah, she did give in to Jay being like, I'm cold. Turn on the car. And then they ran out of gas after poisoning half of the members
Occupants.
Of the vehicle. Yeah. I was going to say party members, but
it was
the other
nice
J line towards Zoe that I picked out was when he was like, you could have been the Jackie O to my JFK, or the Mary Todd to my Abe.
It's like basically every opportunity in this episode, even ones I didn't even think would be opportunities, Jay was just coming onto Zoe. It was very uncomfortable. It was nice to get the first Olivia episode since, like, the 3-parter, even if it's, like, not chronologically.
This would have come out, like, well before.
Possibly.
Yeah.
There might have been something earlier in the OAC. But, like, for us, it's the first one we've listened to, really, with her, the first new one. So, yeah, nice to hear her getting along with everyone.
Yeah, it was nice to hear Olivia just get to be normal kids, normal stuff again. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nice to hear her being emotionally and mentally stable.
I know that this is kind of a dilemma that all of these episodes is presented, where it's like, oh, you're stuck in the cold, like, you know, do I take the younger ones, like, with me, or do I be like, okay, you stay here inside the vehicle because it'll be warmer, but then also it's riskier.
What would you have done? Would you have left them in the car, or would you have gotten them to come with you?
I genuinely don't know. It'd be a better idea. I think I would take them with me.
I would take
smarter.
them with me.
Especially, what happens if you got lost on the way back to the car?
Exactly.
And
I would rather,
if there's an
like,
emergency,
we're all together.
If there's an emergency, then you're there. But, like, you know, it's funny because as soon as they're like, we're stuck and I have to go, my first thought was that Olivia would think, like, oh, man, not again, because this is what happened to her in Unteck the Halls. It was like getting stuck, freezing to death in a car in the middle of the woods.
Olivia's like, if I had a nickel for every time I was stuck freezing to death in the woods, I'd have 2 nickels.
Which isn't a lot, but it's weird to happen
twice.
Yeah. And, I mean, obviously, 2 episodes ago, the Calhouns faced the same dilemma, and they all stuck together, which obviously was a very wise decision in their case.
Yeah, I honestly do think they should have stuck together.
And
I
obviously,
get the
Wyatt would have
reasoning
been
for
able to.
both
Wyatt had a
arguments.
compass with him, so Wooten wouldn't have ended up going in a giant circle.
Yeah, Wyatt's like, hey, Wooten, you should take my compass and also take me with you, because I will be helpful. And Wooten's just like, no. And then he leaves, and I was like, you didn't even take the compass. It sounds
I know.
like.
Well, the good thing is that it wasn't.
That means Wyatt has the compass, at least.
Oh, that's a good point. The important thing is that it wasn't like, okay, I'll take Wyatt with me. Because if that happened,
Yeah.
then they would have run the engine and got carbon monoxide poisoning. And Wyatt
No, that
wouldn't-
had already happened by that point.
Oh, yeah, that was when Wooten came back. You're right.
Yeah.
You're
Honestly,
right, you're right.
if Wooten did take only Wyatt and left everyone else, I would have been like, Wooten is choosing favorites.
Also, it would have been warmer for them instead of being in the bus to just, like, dig a little snow hole igloo thing. Just burrow down into the snow would
Which,
have been
like,
warmer, but...
Zoe and Olivia know this. They know this.
You're right, they just
This
did
is
their
literally
survival.
what they went through in the past arc.
Although, technically that episode is numbered after this one, so...
Oh, okay. Does that mean Olivia hasn't, like, gone through her arc yet?
Technically, those episodes are numbered. Both of those albums are after
Oh, okay, whatever.
this, so...
Olivia's like, I didn't know yet. I learned it from the book I was reading.
Yeah. So I was glad that Wyatt had the sense to realize what was happening and being like, we need to open the windows, we need to go outside. I know that it's cold and this seems like a bad idea, but that's the payoff that we have to do now because of this.
Honestly, I'm so proud of Wyatt because, like, he basically never gets to be the voice of reason in an episode, but he was just, like, hyper competent this whole episode. And I was like, good for you, honestly.
Yeah, there was no weird, like, we need to get you out of the carbon monoxide because that is how the aliens will be able to take you over or anything like that.
No, like, actually, carbon monoxide is safe. It's just a rumor that it's bad
Exactly.
for you.
You're just,
like, yeah,
don't believe big oxygen.
He was just, like, top of his game, full episode. Very proud of that boy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting to see how, like, Olivia didn't display the best leadership skills comparatively in this episode, because even though she knew what she had to do, she still didn't have, like, the perseverance to go against Jay's nagging and gave in to him, both in terms of, like, running the engine too long and too frequently, and then even after they cleared out the gas and stuff, still running it enough to then, oopsie, we ran out of fuel, and now we will
remember
be cold.
that, like, this episode takes place after the one where they go on the missions trip, where they teach people how to use cameras. So he's looking at Jay. He's like, I'm not even going to try and be a leader against Jay because I know he'll win again and it will be embarrassing.
Nobody likes me.
I honestly think in this episode, Jay's probably about as good a leader as Olivia is, at least in this episode. Like, yeah, he did say to turn on the car, but he didn't realize they were almost out of gas. He didn't know that would cause, like, a carbon monoxide leak.
He did know they were almost out of gas because they kept on saying, Jay, we're almost out of gas. You need to turn off the car.
But there's also, like, no way of knowing how long you were going to be out there. Yeah. Which can be, like, oh, good, stay warm while you still can, but also, like, bad to turn on the car, because what if you need that later? They were still all, like, freezing. And, yeah, it was to keep himself warm, but it was also to keep everyone else warm. I think he honestly could have been a worse leader than he was.
He definitely, yeah.
Also, mention of his dad.
Yes, he did mention his dad.
And we now have it confirmed that Jay is the oldest between the four of them. So,
I was glad that
things.
when Wooten circled back around before he headed out the second time, he had impactful last words to leave for Penny about Boris, the
Oh,
mouse who
yeah.
lives in their garage, and he doesn't respond to his name.
He doesn't respond to his name, but sometimes he does. I was just like, me talking to any animal ever.
I also like the idea that there's a mouse living in their garage that Penny doesn't know about and Wooten hasn't done anything about. I'm sure she will be thrilled to find
I
out
feel like Penny would either
that
be
they have rodents.
cool with it or very against it.
Well, here's the thing. I imagine that they use their house to store food that they intend to eat, so they probably shouldn't be thrilled about it.
I mean, like, Wooten is. And Penny and Wooten are on the same page lots of the time. I know I say this most every episode, but I did kind of think there might have possibly been a Wellington mention at points. Possibly there wasn't, but I was just like, there could have been. There was one thing I could argue.
Oh, Wooten did talk about
was
Alaska
a
multiple
reference
times, so.
to Wellington, because Wooten was talking about Alaska and talking about, like, every time we got stuck, or, like, I was in a situation where I was stuck, like, or I was with people who got stuck, they always, like, gave up very quickly. I'm from, like, a long line of quitters, basically, and it was just, like, and then we'd just, like, go into the nearest restaurant that we could find and eat, like, finger sandwiches, basically, and I was like, you and Wellington and Winston got, like, stuck in a car in
What,
a
you
ditch
think
or
Winston
something
was
like
actually
that.
there with his children?
No, it was Wooten and Wellington,
And
and they, like,
Bradford.
snuck off in high school or something like that to go on, like, a car drive somewhere late at night, and then they got their car stuck, and then after 5 seconds of trying, Wellington said, "This is dumb," and then they instantly went to, like, the nearest, like, little cafe place, and Wellington ordered finger sandwiches even though those weren't on the menu. He had them make them, and then he called a tow truck.
Where is our Wooten Wellington backstory, child or teenager's young episode living in Alaska? When
I
will
wrote
we
it,
get it?
and that has definitely happened. All the things I just said have for sure happened in their
I like it
lives.
more than them just being children while Bradford got stuck driving them around.
Oh, yeah, mine is more exciting. Mine has spice.
Yeah.
Mine has cucumber sandwiches. Like, the importance of being earnest.
So that is what happens in the episode. And then there was the web doc. Bob Smithhauser learns how to snowboard. And that's the whole thing, basically. It's weird watching him in the things now that I've actually, like, met him and talked with him at length, IRL. Yeah, and that's the episode. So we're continuing to construct in words on, it's like,
Our little
we got, like,
jigsaw puzzle.
well, it's more like, here's the first episode, and then here's the second one, and then here's the third one, and then the last one will be like the core bit that comes up, but then also creates the final enclosing shell around the original.
It's like stacking Tupperware or something. It's like a little baby's
Except
toy.
for the
where you,
last,
like,
except for the
stack
last
things.
bit, because it's like it fits in the last thing, but then creates the shell over the whole thing overall.
Like a pie.
A pie that has a
I don't like
core.
any of these analogies.
That's why I made a visual demonstration with my hands.
The Venn diagram. Did you like the Venn diagram I sent you? With all the different ships.
Oh, yes. I am going to give this episode...
We don't rate this until the end.
No, we did before, didn't we?
Did we?
I think so. I think we did, because I said they're intended to, like, they go together, but they're intended to also be standalone episodes still.
Then I'll give it a 3.8. Almost a 4, but Yeah, Jay was
Yeah,
not awful in this, but
I'm going
he
to give
did
it the
bother
same
me a
thing
lot.
because Jay is really just bringing things down. Every
Yeah.
day that goes on that they continue to not address his behavior is concerning.
Yeah. There's always like one thing. Like no it's a different thing, but within Jay's time as being a character on Odyssey, it's always me going, I like him, but there's this one thing about him that I can't stand. It used to be like the fact that he was like a bully character, and now it's the stuff with Zoe, and it used to mostly just be Vance, honestly. But now
Yeah.
Vance is
Dead.
murdered. I don't know.
Yeah.
Murdered by Pole House in a violent rage. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll give it the same score, 3.8, I think, because it's like...
I feel like that's
Yeah.
a very fair score.
Well, it's like, I like the episode overall.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the most amazing one, but like, man, Jay really brings it down. Not just it, like in general brings it down when there's always stuff involved, but like his saying where he's like, "Oh, I need someone to hug me, Zoe," and I was like,
There were just so many moments of him talking to Zoe in this episode, and I was like, never. I was already like never talk to Zoe again, but in this episode, listening to it, I was just lying on my bed, and I was like, just tired.
I was like, I'm going to call the authorities.
Yeah. FBI, open up.
Oh, I'm just so tired of Jay not having an episode that's like, stop it.
And like it's a good lesson to teach people is respect people's boundaries.
It's insane to me that we haven't done that,
and we haven't done an Odyssey episode like that before.
It's been set up so well, and it is already independent of Jay and all that stuff. A really, really important episode or lesson to teach to kids. So the fact that they haven't done that already years ago is bewildering to me.
I feel like the closest we've ever gotten to kind of almost something like that, and just a character showing like the importance of respecting others, is with Horace and Renee. Like it's very different, but it does have similar vibes of just like showing what it's like to just like respect someone's boundaries and their opinions on
the episode where Jay saw their hands glued together and he was like, "Geez, man, learn to take a no already."
Yeah, that one.
And I was like,
the episode that was written by a woman. Who wrote this episode?
Who wrote that? It was Marshall, I believe. Yeah.
Marshall, why?
So that's our episode for today.
Was I right that Horace episode was written by a woman?
I believe that was Kathy, yeah.
Yeah. It feels like it would have been a Kathy episode.
What
was that episode called?
It was not No Chemistry whatsoever. It came out last year, and it was called Out of Her
Element. Found it.
Yeah.
I just went to Renee's character page.
Out of Her Element, and written by Bob Smithhauser, actually.
Oh, never mind. Never mind. I'm in the wrong here, and I'll be the first one to admit that.
I'll be the second one to admit it.
Thanks. And Bob will be the third.
Yeah.
Bob, can you write more J episodes, please? You're the only one I trust now.
So, that's what I should have talked to him about, honestly.
King, please write more J content.
No, I mean, can you guys please write an episode discussing
I feel like that would have been inappropriate.
What, for me to say that?
For you to go into focus and tell them how to write for the characters.
I'm just saying, he and I talked for like an hour plus.
And now you know him for life.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, when we were talking about stuff, I should have brought that up. Okay, what are we talking about next time, Victoria?
The next part in this.
Not in the snow. What are we about to record right now?
Buck ends here.
Uh-huh.
Snow. That's not what it's called.
That is a different episode.
As Buck Would Have It,
Yes.
part 1. Actually, all the parts, I
Yes.
believe.
And the album review, yes. So, big 3-part finale to, like, maybe Buck's whole deal overall in terms of his main kind of arc.
Sure hope there's no miscommunication along the way.
That would never happen in a piece of media, ever.
That would never happen in a piece of media.
So that's what we'll be talking about next time as we cap up album 72. Until then, thank you for watching us on our side of YouTube. This has been Devin Francis, also known as Dr. Blackguard.
And I'm an alien.
And you've been watching The Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast.